Welcome to Verge File.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. It started on a Thursday. I still remember the exact time, 6:42 p.m. The room smelled like takeout and fabric softener. We had just finished dinner, and she was scrolling through her phone, barely listening as I talked about work. Then she said it, out of nowhere, like she was ordering coffee. "I think we should take a break." I looked up, blinked once. She didn't look at me, just kept tapping her screen. It wasn't the words that hit me. It was the tone, like she was bored, like I was a phase she'd grown out of. Like all those years were just something she wanted to hit pause on. I asked her what she meant. She said, "I don't know. I just need space. Time to figure things out." No tears, no anger, no fight. Just that same casual shrug she gave the waiter earlier when he brought the wrong drink. I nodded, slowly, quietly. "Sure," I said. That was it. She seemed surprised I didn't argue. But what she didn't realize was that something in me had already shifted. In that moment, something went still. I didn't chase her. I didn't beg. I let the silence stretch. And in that silence, she grew uncomfortable. She left the next morning, suitcase packed like she'd been planning it all week. I watched her drive away from the balcony. She didn't look back. Not even once. To her, it was temporary. To me, it was a door swinging closed. That night, I went out. Alone. No plans, no destination. Just ended up at this little jazz bar we used to walk past, but never entered. I ordered a drink. Sat in the corner. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was missing anything. Because suddenly, everything felt real. Not dramatic. Not emotional. Just real. I watched people laugh, flirt, argue. The whole messy world spinning as if nothing had happened. And in that stillness, I realized something. She didn't need time to think. She needed space to audition a life without me, without the guilt, without the anchor. And I had just given her that chance. What she didn't know? I wasn't planning to wait. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I had finally understood something deep. When someone says they need a break from you, what they really mean is they want to try being free without the cost. So I gave her what she asked for. But I also gave myself something she didn't expect. A new beginning. It was 2 weeks after she left. I hadn't called, hadn't texted. I stayed quiet. Not out of pride, but because I was watching, listening. That's when the first crack showed up. A mutual friend, Ryan, invited me out for drinks. Nothing serious. Just to catch up. He didn't mention her at all until he was 2 beers in. Then he leaned in and said, "You know she's been staying at her coworker's place, right?" I didn't react. He hesitated, like he wasn't sure if I already knew. "She told people it's just temporary," he added. "But come on. You know how it looks." I nodded once and changed the subject. Inside, though, the shift was seismic. I wasn't angry. I was calm, unsettlingly calm. Because now I saw what the break really meant. It wasn't about space or healing. It was about exploring new options without accountability. And she thought I'd be waiting. I didn't confront her. Didn't ask for confirmation. I didn't need to. She had made her move. I was making mine. Over the next few days, I started pulling away from everything tied to her, quietly, efficiently. Bank accounts? Separated. Photos? Stored, backed up, archived, then removed from my devices. Her name? Off every document I could manage without legal involvement yet. I didn't delete her from my life. I just began editing. Meanwhile, her social media told a different story. Smiling selfies, casual dinners, a suspicious number of tagged photos with one man, Jared. Tall, confident, always just a little too close. The coworker, I presumed. No captions, just smiles and wine glasses. Public, but vague enough to give her deniability. But it was enough. She was rewriting the narrative. And that's when something changed in me. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was awake. The fog had cleared. The version of me who waited, who asked, who hoped, that man was gone. And she hadn't even noticed. I started showing up different. New clothes. Clean schedule. Gym again. Not for show, for control. Every routine I had neglected was back, sharper. Not because I needed her to see it. Because I finally saw myself again. And in that new clarity, something ironic happened. I ran into Jared. Not in some dramatic, confrontational way. We were in line at the same coffee shop downtown. He looked at me and paused. That pause told me everything. He knew who I was. But I said nothing. Just smiled once. And turned away. Sometimes, silence is louder than any punch you could throw. I didn't go looking for proof. But proof has a way of surfacing when the game shifts and one player goes silent. It started with the shared cloud account we forgot to separate. A notification popped up on my laptop late one night. A synced photo album from her new phone. Probably an accident. Or maybe she just forgot I still had access. Curiosity didn't even feel like the right word for what I did next. It was more like clarity looking for structure. A puzzle already solved, I just wanted the edges. I opened the album. 38 photos. Mostly harmless. Dinner plates, wine glasses, outfits in front of mirrors. Then came the selfies. 2 faces. Hers and Jared's. One at a beach, his arm clearly around her waist, but cropped just enough to pretend innocence. Another on a rooftop. Their reflections in the window behind them said more than any caption could. The most telling? A screen recording she saved. Him texting her at 1:14 a.m. "Miss you already." She replied with a heart emoji. It was all there, in digital ink. And still, I said nothing. No screenshots. No messages. No late-night calls demanding answers. I just logged out of the cloud. Then I called a lawyer. Not to file anything, yet. Just to ask questions. Quiet ones. Strategic ones. What would separation look like? What could I protect in advance? What steps could I take without signaling movement? And while I gathered facts, she was busy playing the carefree single woman who never technically said she was single. I learned about her Tinder profile through a friend of hers. Unprompted. A nervous mention. "She's just exploring," the friend said, trying to sound casual. "It's not serious. You guys are just on a break, right?" I smiled once and didn't correct her. Let them all believe I was the one left behind. The quiet one. The man who stayed put. They didn't know I'd already booked a condo across the city. Month-to-month lease. Fully furnished. Ready. I had already stopped using our credit card. Cut it without a word. Closed our joint Amazon. Changed my emergency contact at work. Everything she'd normally notice, she hadn't. Because she was distracted. Because she thought I was still sitting in place, mourning. But I was studying her patterns. Her rhythms. How she moved. How she posted. When she was online, and when she wasn't. And when I spotted the inconsistency, it almost made me laugh. She claimed she needed space to find herself. But all she'd done was fill the silence with noise. Tinder dates. Brunches. New nails, new hair, new poses. As if reinvention could be pasted on with filters and captions. She didn't know I was watching it all with surgical detachment. And that every new detail just fueled what was coming next. Not revenge. Just removal. And soon, she'd feel the cold shift in the air, not because I told her anything, but because, finally, there would be nothing left to tell. Only absence. And the weight of it. She didn't notice right away when I disappeared. At first, I was just quiet. Then I became distant. And by the time she realized I was gone, fully, completely, I had already erased every footprint I had left in our shared world. The keys? Dropped at the front desk of her building. I didn't leave a note. The last payment on her car insurance? Canceled, scheduled to end with the month. The couch she loved, the one I bought, was sold in less than 24 hours. I walked away from the house, the shared playlists, the matching mugs, the anniversary dates on the calendar. She had wanted space. I gave her the universe, and I vanished inside it. The silence did something to her, because 3 days after I cleared out, she called. No text, no email, a full-on call, like she was trying to test if I still existed. I let it ring out. No voicemail. She tried again. 3 hours later. Then again. At midnight. The next morning, she texted. "Hey, just checking in. Hope you're okay." Just 5 days earlier, she was brunching with Jared, laughing in his stories. Wearing his hoodie in one photo she probably thought looked too casual to matter. Now she was checking in. I didn't respond. I wanted her to feel it. Not to hurt her, but because it was time she saw what real distance looked like. It wasn't cold. It was clean. And she didn't know how to handle that. The next text came a day later. "Can we talk? I feel like something's off." Something's off? She had gone out and tried on freedom like a new outfit. And now she didn't like the reflection in the mirror. I stayed silent. That was when she crossed the line. She showed up at my work. Didn't make a scene. Just waited in the lobby, eyes darting around like she wasn't sure I'd really walk through that door. I saw her before she saw me. And I turned back. Went through the back exit. Got in my car. Drove away. She didn't follow. But she texted me that night. "Why are you avoiding me? We said we'd just take a break, not break up." That message sat there, unread, at least on her end, for hours. And I knew she'd keep watching for that little receipt to pop up. It never would, because I wasn't avoiding her. I was finished with her. And the thing about finality? It doesn't need to announce itself. It just settles in, quiet, immovable, absolute. Meanwhile, Jared had gone silent too. She hadn't posted with him in days. No brunches. No rooftops. No accidental tags. Whatever they were, it had stalled. Or crashed. Maybe he was never serious. Maybe he saw through her game the moment she told him she was just taking a break from her marriage. Or maybe he got what he wanted and moved on, the way she assumed I never would. And now, with both of us gone, she was floating in the emptiness she had created. But she wasn't alone for long, because something was about to pull her back down to earth, fast and merciless. And when it did, she'd wish I had only ignored her. But this time, she would be the one left staring at the door, waiting for it to open. And it never would. I hadn't heard from her in 3 days. Not a text, not a call, not even a quiet, hey, echoing from her usual digital silence. And then, out of nowhere, a knock on my door. Not the building door, my apartment door. It was a Sunday. I remember because the coffee hadn't even brewed yet, and the sky still held that early gray light. I opened the door expecting maybe a package, maybe a neighbor, maybe anything that wasn't her. But there she was, eyes red, hair pulled into a messy bun that looked like it had been twisted and retwisted 100 times. She wasn't wearing makeup, which told me 2 things. First, she didn't care what I thought of how she looked. Second, she cared a little too much. In her hand, trembling, was a small, white stick. It looked cheap, not from a pharmacy, but one of those dollar store brands. The kind people use not when they're ready, but when they're desperate. She didn't say anything, just held it up like it was proof. Proof of what? I wasn't sure yet. But I didn't need to ask. That tiny, pink line was already screaming at me. Positive. Pregnant. I didn't say a word. She looked down, then back at me like she was waiting for permission to explain. I stepped back without speaking, letting her in, not because I wanted to, but because I needed answers. Just not the kind she thought she had. She sat on the edge of the couch, shoulders folded in, still clutching the test like it might change its mind. Then she finally spoke. Quiet. Hesitant. I think it's yours. There it was. That word. Think. Not I know. Not, it's definitely. Think. I stared at her, and the part of me that once ached to be a father tensed. Not with hope, but with suspicion. She knew what she was doing. She wanted to pull me back in. Anchor me with a responsibility so heavy I'd have no choice but to stay. But what she didn't realize was I'd already lived through betrayal. And once someone steps on your trust, you stop catching falling pieces. You watch them hit the floor. I asked the only question I cared about. Have you told anyone else? She shook her head. No, not even Jared. That name, that smug, empty name that had once made her giggle and hide her phone under the pillow. Now she was pretending like it never existed. She said she hadn't spoken to him in weeks. That things didn't feel right with him. That it was just a distraction. I didn't react, because none of it mattered now. She asked me if I'd go with her, to a doctor, to confirm everything. Said she couldn't do this alone. But she had made her choices alone. The Tinder profile, the dates, the laughs, the secrecy. And now she wanted to rewrite the story. Only problem? I wasn't the same man she left behind. And this chapter wasn't going to be hers to narrate. She left the test on the table and walked out without waiting for an answer. But she would get one soon. And it wouldn't be the one she wanted. I didn't react publicly. No texts. No calls. No posts. Silence became my full-time language. But in private, I moved precisely. The next morning, I called a clinic and scheduled a confidential paternity consultation. They said I'd have to wait until a certain point in the pregnancy for accuracy. That was fine. Time was now my advantage. I told no one, not even my closest friend. I wanted every move from this point forward to be invisible. Strategic silence was more powerful than any confrontation. Meanwhile, she began circling back. Not every day, but enough. Little messages like breadcrumbs. Hope you're okay. Thinking of you. I'm scared too. Not once did she mention Jared again. She spoke as if he'd never existed, like his name had been deleted from the script. But I remembered. And worse, I had proof. I still had access to her shared cloud folder. Not out of pettiness, but because she never removed my login. She never thought I'd stay this quiet. That I could remain so still. One afternoon, she uploaded a photo by mistake. It wasn't meant for public eyes, a shot of her and Jared sitting too close on a cafe patio. Her hand was resting on his thigh. The photo was dated only 5 days before she showed up at my door with that test. I stared at it for exactly 10 seconds. Then I downloaded it and filed it away. Not for revenge, but for clarity. Later that week, she asked if we could talk in person again. I agreed. We met in a neutral place, a coffee shop near my new apartment. She didn't know I'd moved. She assumed I was still where she left me, emotionally and geographically. She showed up with a soft smile and small talk, as if this was all just a rough patch we could patch over. Then she dropped the line. I want us to raise this baby together. No confirmation. No doctor's note. No facts. Just a plea wrapped in nostalgia. I nodded once calmly and said, if the child's mine, I will do the right thing. But we're not pretending anymore. She flinched, not at the words, but at how detached they were. She expected warmth. What she got was stone. Then I handed her a sealed envelope. Inside was the appointment information for the DNA test. My signature, already done. All she had to do was show up when the time came. She said, "You really think I'd lie to you about something like this?" I didn't answer. She got up and left, fast, embarrassed, maybe even angry. But not because of anything I said. It was the tone, the flatness, the shift from emotional man to ghost. She was beginning to realize this wasn't about a child. It was about credibility. And she had lost hers. After that day in the cafe, the messages stopped. The silence she once took as a weapon became her own prison. I didn't check in. I didn't ask how she was. I didn't offer comfort. Instead, I pulled further back. I changed my number. I cleared the last traces of her from my devices. The photos, the chats, the saved passwords. I let it all go, not in rage, but in finality. The game was over, and I wasn't playing anymore. Then the mutuals began whispering. A friend of hers, someone I barely knew, messaged me late one night. Said, "She's not doing well. She's been asking about you constantly." I didn't answer. Because the truth was, she didn't miss me. She missed control. She missed the version of me that would have come running, no matter what she did. But that version no longer existed. I was rebuilding. New habits. New space. A sharper version of myself. No more explaining. No more proving. No more waiting to be chosen. Meanwhile, the isolation began catching up to her. I saw it in subtle places, tagged photos where she wasn't smiling the same. Stories with cryptic quotes about trust and regret. She was looking for sympathy, but all she found was silence. And I didn't need to lift a finger. That's the part people never understand about walking away. You don't need to destroy someone to teach them a lesson. You just need to exit so quietly, so thoroughly, that their echo becomes unbearable. At work, I kept my focus. The promotion I once paused chasing, I applied for it again. The nights I used to waste overthinking, I filled with strategy, movement, and stillness. Meanwhile, I heard Jared had ghosted. Fully disappeared. Deleted socials. Blocked her number. Rumor had it he moved states. Classic. And suddenly, her choices had nowhere to land. Her texts, if she sent any, bounced back. Her calls, if she made them, meant nothing but disconnection. She was alone. Not because I wanted revenge, but because she had burned every bridge and expected mine to stay standing. And in the stillness of those weeks, she finally saw it. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I was indifferent. And that's what cut deepest. She had underestimated what real withdrawal looks like. It's not loud. It's not bitter. It's invisible. And in a world obsessed with attention, invisibility is lethal. She could no longer prove anything to anyone. Not to her friends. Not to me. Not even to herself. She thought she could outrun consequence. But she ran into silence. And silence doesn't negotiate. Weeks passed. Quiet ones. Powerful ones. Not every day was peaceful. I'd be lying if I said I felt nothing. But over time, the weight in my chest was replaced by something sharper, clarity. I stopped asking why. I stopped needing closure. I no longer searched for explanations in old photos or half-read messages. I simply lived forward. And that's when it happened. A knock at my door. It was late. Almost midnight. I wasn't expecting anyone. Not anymore. But I knew that knock. Soft, hesitant, like someone unsure if they deserved to be there. I opened the door, and there she stood. Hair unbrushed. Eyes tired. Not dramatic. Not crying. But quiet in a way that looked foreign on her. She didn't step forward. She just said, "Can we talk?" I didn't invite her in. We stood in the hallway, under the dim glow of the exit sign, like people who used to mean something. She asked if we could sit somewhere, like adults. Just talk. I nodded and walked with her to the sidewalk bench outside. It was cold, and the night was too quiet, the kind that makes everything sound louder than it is. She started with small things. How she'd been, what she'd learned, how nothing felt the same. I didn't respond much. I just listened, not out of interest, but out of patience. Then she finally said what she came to say. "I made a mistake. I was scared. I didn't know how to tell you the truth." I looked at her and said nothing, not because I was cruel, but because I no longer felt the urge to save her from the silence. She filled it herself. Said Jared disappeared. Said the pregnancy wasn't real. Said she panicked after realizing she was losing control and wanted to force a reason for me to stay. And she chose that. That lie. That betrayal. That manipulation. And I could see, for the first time, that she truly understood the cost. But I wasn't there for apologies. I wasn't there for anything, really. She asked, "Is there any part of you that could forgive me?" I stood up, looked out at the empty street, then said, calmly, "I'm not angry anymore. But forgiveness isn't the same as access." Her eyes dropped. She nodded once. No begging. No scene. She simply said, "Okay." I walked back inside without another word. I didn't slam the door. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. That moment wasn't for her. It was for me. The final page of a book I refused to reread. And the silence I left behind wasn't cold. It was earned. She would never forget that. Because the one thing louder than confrontation is peace. After that night, she didn't come back. She didn't text. Didn't call. Not even a missed notification from a fake account. But I started hearing about her, not intentionally. Just in passing, from people we both knew, from places I hadn't stepped into in weeks. She quit her job. She's barely speaking to anyone. Jared's gone. Moved states. No warning. Apparently, the story she told others didn't add up. Gaps in her version began to show, and people noticed. Not because I said anything. I didn't need to. Truth has a strange way of surfacing when you stop trying to control the narrative. The cracks started quietly. First, a friend of hers, Lauren, stopped responding. Then another. Then her sister posted something vague, but sharp. When someone shows you their patterns, believe them. From what I could tell, no one attacked her. No one humiliated her. There was no scandal, no explosion. Just withdrawal. Slow, cold withdrawal. And she felt it. That was the collapse. Not a dramatic fall, but a slow unraveling. The kind that leaves someone awake at 2 a.m. wondering where it all went wrong and why the room feels so loud when it's this quiet. She didn't lose everything. She lost something worse, credibility. People didn't confront her. They just stopped trusting her. Not out of cruelty, but out of caution. And I wasn't even part of the equation anymore. I didn't speak her name. I didn't even flinch when someone mentioned her. I had moved on in the cleanest way possible, completely. Meanwhile, I rebuilt, privately. I poured into work. Into workouts. Into every moment of stillness I used to avoid. And slowly, I became someone I didn't recognize, but in a good way. Someone who no longer overexplained. Someone who no longer overstayed. Someone who didn't confuse love with sacrifice. And in becoming that man, I realized I had never truly lost her. She was never really mine. What I lost was the illusion, the story I told myself about who she was, and who I was when I was with her. Now, there was no illusion, only facts. And in that clarity, I thrived. She, meanwhile, faded. Not dramatically, not publicly, just quietly. The kind of disappearance that no one announces, but everyone eventually notices. And all of it happened without revenge, without drama, without me lifting a single finger. Because sometimes, when you walk away the right way, you don't have to destroy anything. It destroys itself. I saw her one last time. Not planned, not dramatic. Just one of those accidental overlaps life throws at you when it's testing if you've truly moved on. It was a Tuesday, late afternoon, a grocery store near downtown. I was walking toward the checkout with just a few things. Nothing heavy, nothing important. And then I looked up. There she was, standing in the self-checkout line. Hair tied back, sweater too big for her frame. Eyes scanning the screen, but not really seeing anything. She didn't notice me. Not right away. But when she did, when her eyes finally lifted and landed on mine, I saw the pause. Not shock. Not anger. Just a moment of stillness. Like someone forgetting how to breathe for half a second. I didn't look away. Not this time. I didn't smile. Didn't nod. Didn't give her any version of the man she used to know. I simply stood still. Present. Detached. She took a step forward. Maybe by instinct. Maybe thinking I'd meet her halfway. But I didn't. That's when her lips moved. Just barely. I couldn't hear what she said, didn't need to. It wasn't for me. She looked at me like I owed her something. A moment. An answer. A memory, maybe. But I had none to give. Not anymore. That version of me. The one who needed closure. Who chased explanations. He didn't make it to this part of the story. He'd been left behind. Back at the moment I stopped showing up where I wasn't respected. This version? He doesn't chase ghosts. He lets them pass. So I walked past her. No words. No wait. Just clean silence. And in that silence, I felt her unravel. Not from what I did. From what I didn't do. I didn't reach. Didn't respond. Didn't carry her shame for her. I let her sit with it. That was the final moment. Not a scene. Not a climax. Just stillness. The kind that doesn't echo, because it doesn't need to. And as I stepped out into the sun, bag in hand, one thought crossed my mind. I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected. That's it. That was the real ending. Not with anger. Not with revenge. With freedom. Drop it in the comments. Hit subscribe. This is where we talk about what doesn't get forgiven.